Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage. Today we are working on the 39 Mercury project that we pulled out of near the Jersey Shore. So we have some cars we've been moving around because the big McCungy Wheels of Time Rod and Custom Jamboree is this weekend, and I took the Schroll Coupe over there to put it on display, and we're going to be driving the Skelly 34 Ford back and forth, and we were able to kind of empty the trailer out to move some cars around and get this car in the garage. So I'm going to do a couple little projects on this thing so we can get it so that it rolls and moves, and we can do some stuff with it a little bit easier. So a couple big things on this. We mentioned in a previous video, I was able to get the key made that worked for the ignition. So on these early Fords, they have a passenger door lock only. And if the car has not been messed with, the original lock cylinder will have the code on it for the key, and then that will also match the ignition lock cylinder. So we got that key made and everything was good there. What I need to do is also work on getting all the other things to unlock. So the glove box lid, the trunk lid, and the gas tank, etc., etc. So biggest thing is the glove box lid and the trunk. I want to get a key made for that while we're on a roll. So supposedly with early Fords, the glove box lid and the trunk key are the same. So we're going to work on getting the lock cylinder out of the glove box lid because it's probably the easiest. The left rear wheel is sort of half stuck, and this thing is almost impossible to push, so we're going to try and get that undone, and we'll go through a couple more little nitpicky projects like getting some the engine freed up. We're going to push some stuff down the cylinders, try and get that going. So a bunch of little projects where we'll be working on this and hopefully get this car at least so things are rolling around a little easier. Alright, so we're going to put the lock cylinder back in now that we got a good key made up. We do not need the code, and we can put this back in. So with any early Ford products like this, the way to take this lock cylinder out, there is a little tiny flathead screw that's in the door, right here where the door jamb would be. And that little flathead screw, you actually loosen that out, and it has a sharp pointed edge on the inside, and that actually digs into one of the recessed areas on this lock cylinder. So it has just a square on there, so we just have to fit that into the door. And sometimes that's the hardest part. That was actually pretty easy on this one. So you fit that in, and then we just snug up this screw. Like I said, it has a little pointed edge, so it doesn't need to be super tight, just snug. Hoping that this will just slide up over like that. Hoping is the key word. How the heck does that thing come off? Now, gotta get it apart. See the lock cylinder. There we go. There's our number. Alright, so we got the lock cylinder out on the glove box lid. We got the number off of that, so that's good. We're going to send that away and try and get a key made, which will hopefully match the trunk lid. That'll get us a couple more keys for the car, so we can at least be able to latch the glove box lid and latch and lock and unlock the trunk lid. So next thing is this left rear wheel has been a problem since the day we pulled it out of the little shack or garage that it was in Jersey. This wheel, it turns, but like only when you're dragging the car like across the ground does it turn. So while we were in Jersey, I had laid underneath the car and worked the adjusters and brought the drum shoes all the way in, but sometimes that doesn't always do it if the wheel cylinder is locked or corroded, it may not allow it to push in and you may have a problem. So we're gonna try and get this wheel freed up. Big thing I do with these cars having so many projects going at one time is I try and make all the cars as mobile as possible. So anytime I get a car in, usually even quicker than when I've done this one, I try and get it so that it pushes around easily, the engine turns over, you know, different things like that. So when you need to move the car, it's not so bad. So having a stuck wheel is a huge problem on a big car like this. So this of course has the wide 5 pattern on it that Ford put on 36 to 9. So even though it's a Mercury, it's got the wide 5 pattern. So the wheel openings are tiny on this thing. There we go. Alright, so you could, with these, with this drum puller, the early Fords, they have a tapered shaft for the, with a keyway for the rear drum. Usually when the brakes aren't stuck like this, once you get it to break free where you tap, you know, tighten it, tap on the end, tighten it a little bit, it'll crack free and then this drum will just like fall off. But this one's kind of fighting us the whole way, which tells me that there's probably a ridge or a little bit of rust that built up on the shoes. It's actually down all over the ground here where it's falling out from me banging on it. So we know that there's a little bit of rust in there, and that's probably what the problem was. And even if I was hammered the crap out of it to try and break some of that rust free, I probably wasn't going to get it to free up. So a lot of times it's easier, especially in these rear ones, just to pull the drum off altogether. So this may fight us all the way till the end, but there's rust falling out on the ground. I don't know if you can see that, but that feels loose now. There we go. Alright, so got the drum off, ended up having to use a little metric socket. That's what metric sockets are good for in this garage. For a spacer to get this off just the last little way. It was definitely hanging up on the shoes, and once I got it off I could see. This thing has a bunch of new brake parts on it. I could see underneath the car, there's like new brake lines and fittings, probably wheel cylinders. This car was well serviced, but it was not stored very well. And even in good storage, the car sitting this long, it would probably have the same issue. But it has, like, what I can tell is pretty much brand new brake shoes on it. And between the brand new brake shoes that were probably adjusted fairly tightly, and then in the drum here, it is all, you can actually see where it was hanging up, there's actually brake shoe material that was dragging on the rust where it was touching there. So that rust formed, it kind of bonds itself to the shoes. We were lucky that it wasn't that bad. Sometimes it ends up taking the shoes and breaks the pins and the hardware inside when you pull it off. This one wasn't that bad, it was probably on the verge. So this one I can just clean up with a little cookie type wheel, take the excess off, and otherwise it looks pretty darn good. It's just in these spots right here where there's a little bit of rust. Probably where sitting towards the ground, the moisture coming up, it just got some rust in there. So I'm gonna clean that up, we can put it back on, at least for now. The wheel should spin freely so we can roll the car around. We will get back to redoing the wheel cylinders and all that stuff. We get a little further on in the project. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up, throw them back on, and hopefully the wheel will spin freely so we can actually roll this thing around. All right, so the last couple of shots, what I was working on is the 3940 Ford brakes. Even though they're probably the most popular, they are a little harder to adjust. There's actually 4 adjustment points, so there's 2 here, midway up, like the later juice brakes have, but also there's 2 at the bottom, and those are on like eccentrics that you have. As you turn them, you know, it's oblong, so it will push the shoes out and then pull them in. So because these shoes are like brand new, I took all the adjustment out of the top, and it was still like really hard to turn. So I had to go underneath there and loosen those and just adjust them even a little bit. Usually you don't have to do that much if the shoes are worn in, but because these shoes are brand new and they must have had them adjusted out pretty tight, it was still really tight. So now it's pretty good. It's still dragging a little more than I would like for rolling it around, but I can easily turn it by hand, and I think as we start rolling it around, it'll definitely free up. I think there's still a little bit of residue on those shoes, even though I kind of hit them with a little bit of sandpaper. So that's pretty good. I'm going to put the nut back on in the washer, snug it up for now, and this will just get it so we can roll this thing around a little bit easier, and we'll move on to the engine stuff next. Alright, so here's the real test. I think 2 or 3 of us couldn't even hardly push this thing with that one rear wheel that was just stuck a little bit. So now I can, even though it's a heavy car, I can kind of roll it myself. So that's at least the most I need to be able to do, is roll it in and out of the shop. So we can do that fairly easily now. So we're going to get the engine bay opened up here, and get the plugs out and get some oil in the cylinders so that we can get this engine freed up. Alright, so I got the belt off. I wanted to see if the water pumps were maybe stuck on this thing, because the belt was pretty tight. I think they actually got like a size too small, because we had to take the generator off partially just to get the belt off. But this one just started to free up. You can tell it's, so that one was a little stuck. This one, so that one was definitely kind of stuck. So that could have been part of our not turning over problem, because the belt was really tight and these pumps were stuck. You know, not all that stuff's going to fight us. So now these are freed up and the belt's off, I'm going to pull each of the plugs, open it up, put it in 3rd gear, and see if we can rock it again, and see if maybe we can get it to break free. I'll pour a little oil down the cylinders again before we rock it, and we'll see what happens. To make a mess. Got a nice going in. Oh yeah. That one valve is pretty gross. crap on that piston. Kind of glad we did this. You can see all this crap that's around the valves and everything. So even though we would have got, if we could have got this broken free, we would have had all this floating around in the cylinders. As those valves open up and the pistons have, I'm actually like here, I'll grab. That's what's sitting in on the pistons, just griming dirt. So we want to get all that off of here. So it's worth wasting a set of head gaskets just to know rather than wait. I was gonna wait and soak it, but I just figured it would be better to do this and know right away. So we'll pull the head gasket off, and everything had nice green coolant and came apart pretty easy. So that's a good sign for sure. Magic juice. Off we go. See, those don't look as bad. Alright, so after we got the heads taken off, we were doing the Wheels of Time show, and I had this thing just kind of sitting and soaking for a couple of days. So what I did is I took Scotch-Brite and some sandpaper and sprayed some oil and pre and different stuff in there, and just worked each of the cylinders, and then I took some oil, penetrating oil, and left it around these valves. This cylinder in particular, I think, is actually the culprit. This valve had a lot of crap around it, and still does have a little bit, like it might have kind of been seized a little bit or stuck right there. And all the cylinders, especially on this side, and especially that one, had a bit of rust down in the pistons. There's a bunch of carbon on top of them. There's still some in there, but I cleaned all that off, got the cylinders kind of clean, left some oil sit on top of the pistons and down in the bore, and oiled it all. And now I'm ready to start rocking the engine again after a couple of days. Now that we have all the crud off, it's definitely going to help us. And I'm going to try this before we start digging deeper. If I have to, I may pull the intake off and, you know, investigate further to see. But now that we have the heads off, we can actually look and see, like, if one of the if some of the valves are starting to move or some of the pistons are and one isn't. We can kind of try and pinpoint where the issue is. We might be able to pinpoint. But like I said, if I was betting, I would bet it's this valve or that cylinder that has a little bit of rust that's causing the issue. So I'm going to rock the car a little bit, and then I'm going to probably start just putting my hand on the fan and trying to turn a little bit. And we got Mike here, so we'll have him kind of take a look at the cylinders and see if we can see which one, what it's doing and what one is stuck. Grab on the A-pillar.
Which way?
Forward first. Nothing.
No.
That might do it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Pull that off there. There. Oh boy. All right, so got the intake manifold off and the, what I think was a double gasket. I don't know, I haven't seen that before, but there was like a membrane type gasket that was in here under the metal intake manifold gasket, but as you can see, not looking great in there. So this is why sometimes as I've gotten older and less, I don't know, optimistic with these old engines, it's just quicker to pull everything and be done with it. So even if we would have got this thing, you know, we would have spent ages trying to free stuff up. Not pulling the intake manifold, we wouldn't have seen all this nonsense. This is not good. So everything's, you know, caked up with oil and there's grease, you know, all in there that's really bad, and rust, and some of these springs are a little rusty. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have lifters that are stuck in their bores, or pit, you know, or valves that are stuck in there as well. The valve, you know, stuck in the valve guides. So I think what I need to do, number one, is, you can see I stuck my finger in here. Look at this. It's like, yeah, and it's all like caked on there. So I think number one, what I need to do is probably just get some of this stuff cleaned out of there. I'm going to try and maybe get some of the valves to spin and stuff. But to even get everything soaked, I really need to get in here and clean all this out of here. So that's the next big mess. It's not looking great, but maybe we can clean all this up and get it freed up and get it to run. We'll keep working on it here. Out of gas. Every day. Ugh. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm going to try and see if any of these valves are stuck in the keepers. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this valve spring pry tool here, and then I have a little pair of vice grips that I use, and you can grab onto the stem carefully and just give it a little twist. So this one I actually broke free. This is the one that I was worried about, and it was a little stuck. So I was able to break that free, and you should be able to get it to rotate a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just go over, and then you can take that out like that, and you're good. So what I'm going to do is work around this and try to do that on every single valve and make sure that they're all freed up as far as that goes, and that'll kind of see if we can get it break free from there. That one's free. All right. All right, so things are progressing not in a good way. You saw I was turning some of the valves. I got some of them to just spin, and I think they were pretty much freed up. But this one back here, I could not get the spin with the pliers. I ended up in one of the shots there using the pry bar with the clip tool to get the clip out, the retaining clip out. And what I found is the valve is stuck in the guide, so I can't get the valve to spin in the guide. And then the guide was stuck in the block. So this is kind of like the nightmare of a flathead. If that happens, it can be a major pain in the butt. So I started trying to tap on it with pieces of wood and different things, and I was not getting anywhere. So a light bulb went off in my head, and I forgot that when I got my toolbox from my dad, so my old this Mac toolbox I have in the shop here, I inherited from my father when he retired from being a big truck mechanic. I got his big box, and he left some of his tools that he didn't want in it. And one of them I found in there was this KD valve guide puller set for removing frozen valve guides from Ford V8 and Mercury and Lincoln Zephyrs. And I asked my dad, like, where the heck did you get this? He said, oh, a guy I used to work with, do I like Ford? So he gave it to me. My dad doesn't work on flatheads. He didn't work on flatheads. Maybe when he was a kid he tinkered, but so anyways, I remembered to get that tool. I grabbed it and I started turning it, and it actually worked pretty quickly. And my camera battery died, but what happens is you slide the little fork in, and it goes underneath the guide there, and then this top foot here, or cup, goes around the valve, and it just barely fits around the valve here. It's hard to see. And you turn this lever, and as you turn the handle, it will start pulling the guide out. And I had a lot of pressure on there. I'm like, oh man, this is kind of scary. And I gave it a little tug and a tap, and then one more tug, and all of a sudden it just went pop, and the valve popped up. So, and now I can turn this, and it is pulling the guide out for me. So you can see this valve is starting to come out, and I'm hoping now it's loose enough I can take this off here. So this is a KD valve guide puller tool. So this is a great tool. I've seen people online using heat and different tools they welded. If you're doing flatheads, this is not a bad tool to have. I have not had to use it before because a lot of times when the engine's, this is an odd one for me because the engine looks really nice other than this problem we're having. So a lot of times I'm just like, oh, engine needs rebuild, it's junk or whatever, and we don't go any further. So I haven't had to really use this tool before, or I've been able to break them free with a pry bar. So I was able to break that free. You can see all the rust that just kind of popped up underneath of there. And there's our guide. So it popped up, but look at all that rust underneath the valve there. So all of that was just sitting in there. That's why it's stuck in the guide. So now I pulled the whole guide and valve assembly out. I can put this like in the vise, and I can spray Schroll and actually free the valve up in the guide. And I can put the whole thing back in, put a retainer clip back on, and it should be good to go. And of course I'll clean up the guide bore there and make sure that's all cleaned up. But that is a win, but I have a feeling that a handful of these cylinders, that's the problem. And I took the starter out, and you would think it's something else, but the bores are pretty nice in this thing. They're not like real rusty or anything. So I think it's just a case of the valve train got rusty from where it was sitting or how it was sitting, and it is, all it takes is a few valves. So this one's out, so I'm going to put this in the vise, get the valve freed up in the guide, and then I'll start working around there and try and get all these freed up. I'll probably, depending on how bad it is, I may end up pulling all of these and just cleaning them and putting it back together, but we will see. But this one was definitely an offensive one that was causing it to not turn over. Okay, so that's locked in there. Come here, dog. Hey, buddy. Oh, there it went. Just pops like that. Not as bad as the other one, but definitely was stuck. You can
see on this one all the crap that's in there. So again, I'm trying to show the reality of this. A lot of times there's all this misinformation or old wives' tales on flathead stuff. Oh, you just keep pouring crap down the cylinder and it'll get broken free. There's nothing I would have done other than soaking the whole thing in a pot of molasses, the whole car, it would have done anything. So yeah, you can see all that like crap that just was rusty and old oil that kind of dried up and caked on. So I'll have to clean all that out. That's quite a job. And then we have our lifter here, which is already crap just falling off of it. So hey, what can you do? So I'll get this valve freed up from this guide and then everything cleaned up and we'll have another one done.
Yeah.
Are you going to watch the engine?
Yep. Go towards you first?
Yeah.
She is not budging.
All right, so the gist of today's video is fail. Fail over and over and over again. So I dug into this car, took like all kinds of stuff apart, and it is still stuck. We've also just figured out in the last couple of shots you saw, we were rocking the car now that I had some help and I was working the clutch. The clutch is also stuck. So we have a stuck clutch, but if the clutch was stuck but we had enough people to push it, we still should have been able to push the car and roll the engine over, and it is not happening. So we are one step away from me hooking the chain to the tractor and dragging this thing and seeing if we'll just free the engine up. But I still don't even then think it's going to do anything. So I'm going to kind of put this car on ice for just a minute. This was just a quick project while we had the Schroll Coupe at the Wheels of Time show. We were able to free up a space to pull this out of the trailer and get a little bit of discovery work done on it. And unfortunately, it wasn't good. Even though this car was stored pretty well and looks decent, it didn't spin over easy, where the 34 behind me, we were able to get that spinning over right as soon as we got it out of the barn, basically. So it's kind of crazy how that works, but we're going to keep working on it. I want to keep a flathead in this car, so no matter what we do, even if I find out that this engine is just needs a rebuild or is that stuck or something catastrophic happened in the bottom end, I'm still going to try and save this engine, but we have other flatheads we could put in. So next time I work on it, probably what I'll be doing is putting it up on the lift so we can pull the oil pan, see what's going on in the bottom end, try and pull the floorboards apart so that we can, or the trans cover, so we can get into the inspection plate and try and free that clutch up. And if all else fails, we may just have to pull the engine and just investigate even further, but it's not been a win, unfortunately. So that's where we're at with the 39 Mercury project. We're gonna again shelf it for just a little while, and we'll get back on it hopefully once it's closer to more into the fall and the Hershey rush has passed. We might tinker with this just a little bit more. So that's where we're at on this one. So thank you guys for following along. Appreciate it. Catch you later.